Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ted. Welcome to the Business of Cyber Show, where we talk about resources because there aren't enough of them going around. It means we got to use them super wisely. Today, we're going to be talking on episode 19 about a topic that me doing a lot of travel in between Europe and the United States in 2023, a topic regularly comes up in dinners and coffees across the globe. It says, hey, who's really winning the cyber race? And I'm super excited to have a very good friend and colleague on the show to talk about that, who actually has lived all over the world, Miss Trish McGill. Trish, welcome. How are you? Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Doing great. How about yourself?
Doing pretty well. It was, I think, October of the pandemic. I remember because I was sitting in an old office. You and I somehow got on the phone together, and we immediately kicked it off with this. I think maybe it was a partnership opportunity, but we were talking about the intricate differences between Europe and the United States. Um, isn't that true? And it's been about what, 3 or 4 years since?
Yeah, I think it's about 3 years ago, around, same thing, Thanksgiving, around the holidays. And we met at a conference, and I was doing a speech there on the differences. And I remember you were one of the first people that actually reached out to me asking, tell me a little bit more about the culture in Europe and what impact this has on cybersecurity. And ever since then, that's kind of been our story, and we've preached it more to more professionals, and we see more and more people asking the same questions. How come there's such a big difference, and does it have anything to do with culture? So yeah, I think we started that discussion.
Yeah, we did. And this is a discussion that I've had with a lot of people in the United States, a lot of people outside the United States. I really appreciate you coming on board to talk to us today about it. We had about 135, maybe even close to 150 people register. So I'm excited to dive into this topic about this cyber race, whether it's a cyber arms race, whether it's a cyber maturity race. We left the title kind of open because we wanted to have an open conversation about what are all the different components of a great cyber maturity program. And we're going to be diving into that today. So as we look at kind of our focus for today, well, before we do that, Trish, would you give us a little bit of overview of where you're from, what takes up the majority of your time, and what you hope to kind of share today?
Sure. So you are right. I have been all over the world. I've lived all over the world. I have a military background as well. And I think because of the travel I've done so much and I'm still doing, I am able to give back to the community in cybersecurity because I pick up things as I go and learn from it. And right now, I have the honor to be a trusted advisor and a security expert to give advice to organizations what strategies they should implement and how. And I also assist them in implementing a roadmap to achieve cyber resilience.
Yeah, it's always been a big topic of discussion for us. Critical infrastructure focused. We've always been working together on companies that are in those what I think U.S. as well as European Union would deem critical sectors, because there's some differences there. Enjoyed always being a part of the conferences with you. The most recent one was in London, right? What, about a month and a half ago. For me, one of the reasons that this was a kind of a salient topic is because the first time that I really visited Europe in a kind of cyber delegation capacity was in 2019. And then coming back after the pandemic in 2022, as well as 2023, it's not just regulation that has changed, right? I think that the actual conversations that people are having at the vendor booths, the actual conversations they're having at dinners, the actual conversations that they're having in their offices, Europe in general, and I won't point out one country versus another, but Europe in general just seems to be a lot more advanced today than it was 3 or 4 years ago. The same might be said for Houston, not Houston, but the United States. But that's kind of where we started collaborating a month and a half ago on this topic, and that's how it turned into an event here.
Yeah, I remember we had a great conference in London, and I believe the main reason it was so great because we had you as the United States, myself representing the Netherlands. We had great people from the Nordics and also from England and Germany, and we kind of stuck together because we were in a panel discussion, but also we had questions. We were asking each other questions. Hey, how do you do this? And why do you do this? And I think that kind of also gave us the idea for this session, because the more we started asking questions, we actually found out that different regions do things differently. And then the question was, of course, why are they different and what can we learn from it?
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. We're going to dive into it. We're going to dive into it with a couple of visualizations. We're going to talk about culture. We're going to talk about product buying process. We're even going to talk about venture capital. And we've got some visualizations that I think are pretty cool that you came up with, Trish, to talk about where individual countries from a global perspective sit. As we dive into this, we started this with a LinkedIn poll. I think we had about 80 people comment, which is pretty good for a LinkedIn poll. Nothing went viral, but bottom line is that people are interested in this topic. So we're going to be talking about those results to kick us off. We'll go into a deep dive to some of the facets that position someone to say the EU or Europe in general is winning the cyber race versus the US. Super excited. And then finally, as we get questions, I'm going to invite the audience to post questions or to post comments. And as we go through, Trish and I agreed we wanted this to be very collaborative. So if we see a question that really reigns true to what we want to talk about, we're going to post that up on the chat live so that everybody can see it. And anything else I missed, Trish?
Nope. I think that's it. I do want to ask the audience, because I can't see who's all dialed in. But yeah, if you have questions, comments, feedback, please, that's what we wanted to do. We wanted this to be interactive, because so far your poll and also some of the comments on LinkedIn have been great and gave us some ideas to add to this session.
Yeah, totally. So it kicked off LinkedIn poll result. I did this when we had about 30 or 40 people signing up. What I did was very simply, which region is better positioned for long-term cyber resiliency, regulation, and capabilities in critical infrastructure? Europe coming in at 49%, United States at 27%, and then a pretty even split between Middle East and Asia Pacific. Now, A, this doesn't represent every region in the entire world. B, we sort of got specific with what we were asking, which was resiliency, regulation, and capabilities. What do you think, Trish? You agree with what LinkedIn pollsters have come up with here?
So I'm going to be very honest, and I know I hope I have people from our region here in this session, but I actually voted United States. What did you vote, Ted?
Well, I don't remember voting on it myself. I would actually vote Europe, which I find hilarious because I live in the United States.
I know.
And I'm saying that Europe is forward. You live in Europe. You're saying United States is forward. I actually didn't know that perspective until about 5 minutes before.
I know.
So let's dive in. I mean, why Europe versus the United States? It's interesting. I think that there were enough people. Anything past about 30 or 40 folks that commit to a poll, I think means something. It'll be interesting to see if some of the folks that actually participate in the poll can offer their perspective today. But I think Europe is better positioned. I do. I think from a regulatory perspective, I think the way that they're approaching, I think the way that they're approaching product selection, the way they approach investment into new types of products and companies, I think they've just got a little bit more of a marathon mentality that over time is going to make them more resilient, and also what they're aligning to. But that's just my personal perspective. And that isn't to say I don't love what the United States is doing. Hell, I live here. But I just think that with a marathon mentality, I'd rather get 100% answer a little bit later than, big swings in wins and investments short term. Make sense?
That does make sense. And of course, I live in Europe and I love Europe. I also used to live in Houston. So I also love Houston and the States. So that has nothing to do with this.
Right.
You can look at it from different perspectives, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into this. You make a very good point, Ted. You're talking about a marathon, and I'm thinking of sprinting and reacting quickly when we need to get caught up with cybersecurity maturity levels. So from that perspective, I understand, but we'll talk about it in the slides.
Very cool. Well, I like the next slide that you came up with. What are we looking at here, Trish?
So, because this is supposed to be a race, right? So you want to kind of show who's number one and number 10. I have a disclaimer though. There are so many different sites and so much research has been done. This can be looked at from a different perspective, but I just grabbed one overall and then started comparing, and the US comes out as number one still. And one of the reasons, of course, is it has top security conferences. The cybersecurity conferences are great. So you can learn a lot and you can have a lot of knowledge sharing at a very high level. There's a very strong technical ecosystem. And last but not least, and I think that is so important, about 58% of the world's digital security organizations are US originated.
I can't
So,
argue with any of those points. I can't argue with any of those points. I
yeah,
didn't think about security conferences. I wholeheartedly agree. I think if you're talking about knowledge sharing, I think there doesn't exist a better place for knowledge sharing. The question is, where are all the different vendors, the product leaders, the actual asset owner, where are they all coming from? I've actually seen in the US that there are more, I'd say foreign-based or EU-based countries that are participating in that kind of forum or that
of
information sharing. So
course.
that's interesting.
Yes, absolutely. Because I always tell my company when I want to travel to conferences, I don't want to go on vacation, but there aren't really conferences here in the Netherlands that I need at a top quality level on cybersecurity. So that's the reason. So then I want to first move to number 9, and that would be, of course, the country that I am based in.
Right.
This was a top 10. So, I mean, there's top 20s too, but this is enough. So I wanted to explain a reason why Netherlands comes out at number 9. And it's still very good because there's many countries in the world. Is first of all, there's an emphasis on innovation and collaboration. And I think that is so important. Yes, the Netherlands are focused on innovation, and you can see that, and that is fantastic. On the flip side, though, because we are more focused on innovation, the cybersecurity is kind of running behind. Collaboration is absolutely key for the Dutch market, but that also has a flip side because everybody wants to have a part of it and everybody wants to meet and discuss it. It may take a little bit longer. So it has a good side and a less good side. And then, of course, our digital infrastructure is well established. It's a strong infrastructure.
So you're actually saying that the Netherlands, as a unique example within Europe, has been more focused on innovation or
Yes.
digital transformation, and that cyber has actually been kind of a lagging indicator or a lagging investment resource?
Yes, absolutely. And it's funny because the Netherlands are a very small country, but our innovation level and digital transformation is very, very modern. But cybersecurity is not taken along just as fast as the innovation.
See, somebody had mentioned Singapore, which I'll let you get to in a moment, but this is one of the biggest foundational items of the Business of Cyber series, which was originally founded and brought to the market because resources get used up across innovation, across digital transformation, across security, across OT and IT. And so what happens is I feel that the CISOs or the OT and the IT directors have a way more of a playing field, and they don't have enough players to get on that field. They don't have enough resources to get on that field because of the innovation and the digital transformation from the previous 10 years. So you take a look at somewhere like the United States or somewhere like Singapore that I think has actually led in digital transformation investment. So too positively increases with every dollar you spend on digital transformation, so too increases the digital footprint that you have to secure at some point. But nobody was really thinking about that. So what you're saying is the Netherlands might be behind 5 to 7 years, but it's now starting to see that it has to invest in cyber as much or more than it had in the past.
Yeah, there's been a rapid speedy acceleration in the last 2 years,
Right.
all of a sudden. And, I keep saying it, but we'll talk about it later. NIS 2, thank you, is going to definitely help. But yeah, definitely, because now, of course, it's also visible to the Netherlands, the critical infrastructure, how tied together everything is. And so the amount of fear is now also increasing, because the question is, what would we do? We put all this innovation here for us, but what if it's no longer available?
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's why it's like triple accelerated in the last 2 years.
Yeah. Well, I think you got a comment from somebody on the show that actually agrees with you. Who are the other countries looking at 4, 5, and 6? I mean, we talked a little bit about Singapore. What do you think about Germany and London?
Yeah, so Germany, being number 4, definitely has a robust economy.
Right.
We have advanced technology that is a strong element in there. And then, of course, let's not forget a very large automotive and
Huge.
manufacturing industry that the whole world cannot live without.
There's a
So,
saying in OT that if you want to be in Europe and you don't have multiple customers in Germany, you'll never fly, right? There's just so much there. But it's hard to get into business in Germany if you're an American company, from my perspective, just because they have such a robust advanced technology, they can build so much themselves. Do you agree?
yes, that for sure. Their manufacturing and their concept, their minds is also set to build and produce and to invent. And secondly, their commitment to protection of data and
Right.
privacy. And nowadays, of course, our OT also has data of us,
Mhm.
right? So their commitment is very high.
Right.
Yeah.
And as you look at England and what it's done comparatively to other countries in the region, why do you think that they fall at number 5, Trish?
Yeah. So I would have placed them higher. But
Right.
yeah, that's personally in my experience, the people that I've worked with and also the organizations. But because of the active cyber defense program that the NCSC brought out, they actually in England, the promise was made again to look after the commodities that impact the people's daily lives. And in England, I think it's so important they realize we have so gotten used to IoT, IIoT, and everything else, like controlling our heater, controlling our
Right.
vacuum cleaners, and you
Right.
name it,
Right.
that they make the promise to help us protect it.
Makes sense. I think, do you know offhand from this list who came in number 2 and 3, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, Canada and Australia.
Canada and Australia. Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. There's a lot to be said for Canada, Australia, US, and other major countries like that work together.
Yeah. I see a nice comment in here. Cyber is picking, is beginning to pick up.
Yeah, I tend to agree. So bottom line, I appreciate the analysis. It's one person's view. You're showcasing that a little bit. I tend to agree with all this. The interesting thing about Europe, which is probably one of the more challenging aspects of a comprehensive cybersecurity program or maturity, is that you got all these different countries, right? Different countries that speak different languages, different countries that have different issues, different critical infrastructure, different ways of doing things. Similar to, I guess, in some ways, the United States, right? So we have states. Now, there are states that have regulations in the US, and then there's federal. We see, at least from my vantage point, less confusion in the European Union when it comes to regulation. I think they've been more organized. And so when you think about regulations, Trish, we don't want to turn this particular show into an overview of every single regulation. Let's name a few of them. What are the main differences between the US and the EU when it comes to regulations that have come out, let's say the last 2 years? We'll both take a crack at them.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. You can look up all the regulations, online. And basically what I have always said, and I will still say it, any standard, any framework, any regulation, it's still basic cybersecurity. And as
Right.
long as you follow basic cybersecurity, you will be compliant. That's first of all what I would like to say. So what I see is in the European regulations, very focused on privacy.
Right.
That is the history. However, again, also thanks to NIS2 directive, recently in the last year and a half, there's a switch that came up that people starting to realize we need to make sure our infrastructure is resilient because we are the ones that created this. And what if we can't use it? So we need it to survive. So I think the switch is now coming in Europe from privacy to resilience because it's one of our primary needs nowadays to have daily business. And I
Yeah.
believe in the States is industry focused. You can have specific regulations or frameworks industry focused, and also from state to state you can have different acts. But I still feel, and this is a long time ago, in 1999, the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act came out in the United States.
Right.
That was the first one to talk about basic security. So, and it took us years in Europe to follow that, but we're no longer so behind as what we used to be.
When you take a look at regulation in the United States for banking, you take a look at retail, you take a look at healthcare, right? Privacy related in a lot of cases, because I have a file, I have some sort of privacy information, and I can equate the loss in a ransomware incident directly to that number of files. So it has become, I wouldn't say, it's in a form of sustainment, right? It's 10, 15, 20 years old. Companies know what the regulations are. Critical infrastructure, though, we don't see that same sort of alignment. When you take a look in the utility space, the OT people really don't mess with NERC-CIP. When you take a look at what the oil and gas and pipeline directives have been, they've been very specific to that sector. When you take a look at what the SEC has recently done with being able to basically charge people on their overall board of directors practices, how much cybersecurity has become a practice. I just don't think, I think the US is doing okay, but I don't think we're very comprehensive. I think a lot of people in America like a decentralized state of regulation, which I tend to agree with from a commercial perspective, from an economy perspective. Decentralization is always very helpful because it relies on everybody to do the best that they can with the tools that they have. I just feel that Europe is doing I'm not going to say a better job yet. I think it's doing a more comprehensive job, specifically with GDPR and how effective it was, or how big it was and how well it rolled out. There's an alignment of money-making companies to the GDPR standard that we just generally don't see in the United States. And I think that whether it's the stick or the carrot, I think that when NIS2 goes into effect later this year, where you can actually be fined, I think European countries are just aligning to that better. Do you agree? And if you do, why is that? And why do we see American companies not maybe making that same level of investment at the C-suite level?
I think one of the reasons is that Europe and cyber law, OT cyber law, we just recently started to have them. In the United States, they've been around. There's a lot of rules and regulations and also local. And I think, again, there are so many rules and regulations in the United States that whatever comes up is just another one. Here in Europe, GDPR was huge. That was like the first real big one. Of course, there are many other small ones. And now the NIS2 directive has a different twist to it than the first one. So when we get something and we all have to comply, we take it serious. We have to, because we don't have that many.
Well, and I also think I mean, it seems to me that Europe just takes its time and it develops a far more comprehensive standard than just throwing something out there. Americans, we don't we don't wait for anything. We don't have a ton of patience. And I'd like this user comment. I think it's a race of who has the best attitude. And don't forget, it is company led in most cases. What I think that individual is trying to say is you can have the greatest regulations, you can have all the resources in the world, but if the company leadership doesn't make a concerted effort to improve cybersecurity, then it's probably not going to happen. NIST CSF is the most widely used, controls-based framework in the United States. I think it's the most widely used globally. It's very adaptable. I did a piece on it about 2 weeks ago. And I think it sets a great example that in the United States, even if you don't have tons of regulatory requirements, here's a standard that was published by NIST. It's very well, it articulates extremely well all the core basics. Use it to your advantage. And I think the United States relies on people to comply at their own discretion based on the resources that they have, based on business decisions. Whereas Europe says, hey, this is a standard. We're implementing it. We got all the information from all the different, partner countries that have participated, and it becomes law on this date, and you have to comply. I think Europe is ahead of US in that, in most sense.
Yes, that's true, and I do think it has to do again with that we don't have that many rules, regulations, and laws, not as many as the United States. So when we get one, we know we have to comply. But at the same time, and we'll get to that a little bit when we talk about cultures, and this mindset is still there and definitely also in the smaller countries. But why would we need cybersecurity measures or regulation? Who's after us? Nobody really wants us. They're after the United States or the bigger countries. So still, the number one thing I think is important, whether it's a NIST or any regulation. Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, is definitely the mindset. It's the internet. It's not the country.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I read this article this morning. You can see it at the very bottom. It was about Europe upgrading its overall cybersecurity program. And I found this, I couldn't put the words to it. There's actually a comment that came in, and we're going to show in a minute. U.S. views cybersecurity as a national security issue. That's why NIST came up with the directive that, not the directive, but the NIST CSF in 2014. As they said, look, cybersecurity is a national security issue. Here are the 16 sectors. Everybody needs to go and do great things in their own cybersecurity. They gave them a lot of resources. And they said, go do it. Where I think starting with GDPR, it's always been about privacy. And what I think Europe has done, which I'm personally on board with, that I don't think America has done, is that the EU has really said, we're about protecting the economic continuity across all these different regions and all these different countries. And so if we can build in measures to keep us moving economically, then naturally all of our critical systems will be moving effectively. One of the things I like about Europe is where US has said, here are 16 critical infrastructure sectors, Europe keeps adding to it. I mean, I think even social media is one of them. And that's a different mentality. So they're connecting things far more towards the economics. While we're doing that, I just want to show real quick a comment from a good friend, Joe. Joe, how you been? Based on what Trish mentioned, it sounds like the U.S. is focused more heavily on resilience. I agree, while Europe is focused more on privacy. If that's the case, then we can collaborate and learn by looking externally at countries with specific expertise. Yeah, Trish, would you say that the GDPR mission, okay, going back to whenever it was started to where it is today, do you think that the GDPR mission has been accomplished in Europe?
Yes.
And do you think that has
evolved? A little sidebar. Everything always has room for improvement, but my short answer is yes.
Of course. If you look at what was done with privacy, aligning all these different countries together on one standard, it's an immensely robust standard, by the way, if nobody's ever taken a look at it. It is beyond robust. Anybody says, I'm going to go do a GDPR assessment or audit, clear your calendar for the next couple of weeks, okay? It's very, very intricate. And so to me, not being a GDPR expert or even a NIST2 expert, it looks like there are building blocks that Europe is kind of getting
Yes.
some momentum there?
Because now that we have, and of course it's quote unquote, now that we have our privacy under control, reasonably under control, we've come, and but that took a very long time.
Right.
But then very quickly, we've matured and understood, but wait a minute, innovation, digitalization, smart factories, critical infrastructure, IoT, IIoT, how are we going to protect that? Because we need it.
Yeah.
And that's the switch now that in the NIS2 directive, like you said, the OEMs, but also the sectors have expanded. I
Right.
applaud NIS2 for adding so many sectors to it. And to take it a step further, there are sectors that are not yet on it or are not sure if they need to be on the list of NIS2, but they want to be on there because
Yeah.
what they have needs to be protected because they need the continuity in order to service the civilization here.
Yeah, it's very interesting as we go to our next point, which is cultural differences.
Yeah.
Let me be honest. If you ask me which asset owners in US versus Europe are more mature, I'm going to say US, even though I think the US, you have a lot of asset owners that are extremely mature and you have some that are very immature still, that just haven't made investments. Maybe they're just too small. Maybe they haven't had a robust cyber team. But we're talking about just asset owners. I still think US is more mature today. Whether or not the US and who's going to win kind of the long-term race, I still think that Europe is better positioned to do that. Because what we've seen is that even though we might be more mature today, everybody that has been in cybersecurity or risk in general knows that you're only as good as your next investment of people, process, and technology. And so we can have this huge wave of products enter the market, also almost serve as a false blanket of security as we take a look at the longevity here. Are we more resilient as a country if we install more products and we pay more for services? I don't know the answer to that. What I think comes down, and this is kind of a bridge to cultural differences, is what's the US dealing with today? What is Europe dealing with? I think US is dealing with its position in the overall global economy as everybody's watching what the United States does. But as far as having very particular threats outside of the historic threats, I don't think that's there. I think Europe is dealing with a lot more close to home. And I think that when NIS2 was really developed to bring everybody together and to say, hey, look, we're not going to run towards this battle. We're going to walk towards it. We're going to walk towards it together. We're going to build a very robust series of standards, and we're going to hold people accountable for it. I don't think the U.S. has done that. I think the U.S. can do it. The United States and its allies probably have moved more effectively and quickly when it really counted over the course of history. But as far as a cybersecurity race, I just don't see that happening relatively as much in the US versus today's Europe. Your thoughts, Trish?
Yeah, so I see a great statement in our chat here by someone that's saying that some of the things that happen in the world, of course, also has an impact on how people feel in cyberspace, and that we should, of course, accelerate our protection. Absolutely. To anytime anything happens in the world, whether it's a war or if it's COVID or anything, and even seasonal, we see an increase in cyber attacks. We know that. And I think people are starting to get more scared here in Europe on that end. So definitely true. The thing is too, that I still notice, especially in the Netherlands, is I still get too many questions like, why would anyone want to attack either the Netherlands or my company?
From the actual asset owners.
Yes, that's what the asset owners will say, that because they are obligated now to do NIS2, some of the asset owners, and then they say, but I don't understand. We have nothing an attacker would ever want. So the perception is still not there that the second you click yes to internet, that you're globally connected. And they're also not aware
Right.
what the cyber attackers can do. And it has nothing to do with specifically attacking the Netherlands or company ABCXYZ, you
Right.
know? So the culture difference is still behind and not understanding that we are just as susceptible, because in the Netherlands and some other countries in Europe too, you're not
Mm.
obligated to report your cyber incidents.
Yeah,
And
it's
in the
interesting.
US, you're a little bit better at it. You have to report them.
Well, now you do, but that's only if you're a publicly traded company in a lot of cases. Now they've done sector specific, even state specific
Mhm.
um, guidance or regulation, which I won't get into the depths of. Bottom line is that I think there's a lot of companies in the United States that would say the same thing, Trish. They haven't bought, they're just now starting on the whole asset inventory journey, saying, I really don't know what I have. And they're kind of the laggards in the economy that are saying, well, I need to start securing something. I need to start investing in my cybersecurity. And what they're finding, a lot of these companies, that the prices are too high. They can't really compete in the cyber arms race because pricing has got so high. Why has pricing gotten so high? Because a lot of the different product companies have become unattainable in a lot of ways for a lot of different
That's
reasons,
true. Yeah.
which we'll come to soon. So it's interesting. I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Tell me about culture. You've traveled across the whole world. I mean, I think the United States, we're very early adopters. We have a very high tolerance for risk. We are willing to invest in a cybersecurity solution and not get the value for a longer periods of time on the hope that we're more secure. I see a total different risk picture in Europe in general. What say you from a cultural perspective when people are thinking about cyber investment, Trish?
It takes a long time to get everybody on board to be convinced that it is necessary. And it's only just that, let alone everything else that is associated with it. It takes so individually, people understand. They understand it is needed. They have heard about it too. But to be fully convinced that the investment is needed, because it's an investment,
Mm.
versus what is the cost if you don't do it, and then again, that job is up to us, right? We need to convince the board, we need to show them metrics, we need to ask them what their risk is, of course, from a company perspective, and also what are your critical processes in your manufacturing organization. But it takes a very, very long time to get everybody to say I do, and that
I
means everybody has a vote.
Well, it's interesting. I wrote three things down in your first statement. You said it takes time to get everyone on board to be convinced that it's necessary. Everybody on board, convinced and necessary. Um, Talk about each one of those. So I agree. Tell me about everyone being on board. Does that mean that decisions on cyber investments are more of a collective activity? Is
Yes.
it, why is that? Is that cultural or is that regulation? What is that, Trish?
So it's really funny. When I first came to the Netherlands, I came straight from the States to the Netherlands. I really had to get used to, I mean, it's the way people do business, right?
Mm.
You do business differently from German people or from English or Dutch people. So it's just the way we do business. And it has a lot of good sides too, but it needs to be a consensus, and people need to be on board and convinced it is of added value.
Right.
And not until they see and feel and understand it's of added value will nothing happen. But everybody has a vote in this. It's consensus based.
So there's going to be a piece, and we'll just skip over, we'll just do it now, but we were talking about how products are purchased, right? So let's talk about how products are purchased specifically to the culture. Here's how it is in the United States. If there's budget from the leadership, your early adopter security leader is going to spend a significant proportion of time putting his or her team out to go find solutions. They're going to run small proof of concepts that may last a max of 3 months, but usually it's faster. 90% of the decision is made before that even starts. And if they can afford it, they buy it. And I think that run fast to secure by any means is starting to have its issues show across the fabric of the cyber economy, specifically for critical infrastructure. Okay, that's a separate item that we can talk about. It doesn't sound like Europe is like that. Europe takes a lot longer to make decisions. They like to be in consensus and alignment. So naturally, does it take longer to get a product bought and installed in Europe than United States?
Yes, absolutely. It does. But I have to also add to that. Once everybody is on board, and of course your key stakeholders you need, right? Then the entire organization is behind it.
Right.
But
And
it
what
can
is that?
take years.
See, that you don't have in the United States. You just don't. I see organizations where the IT side of the house and the OT side of the house specifically state, this is to a product vendor. They say, if you share data with the other side of the house, we're going to not do business with you anymore. And that's a very unique case.
Yeah.
But we're just now seeing, from a macro perspective in this market, CFOs are starting to become, they're very rarely a check mark, yes, but they are very quickly becoming an X. And so you never knew that the CFO was part of the buying process for your product, service, or solution. But when you find out that it got shot down, sometimes it's a CFO, sometimes it's a digital transformation officer, sometimes it's somebody that has nothing to do with the technical side of the solution. But we see that today in 2023. We weren't seeing that in 2018, 2019, 2020. So when I look at what the US is doing from an implementation of resources, right? The business side of the cybersecurity, I think we're starting to bridge closer to what Europe is naturally doing, which is a consensus-based, community-driven approach to investments. And if you think about it in real world terms, why would you not, if you believe that cybersecurity is a business problem and in turn a business decision, why are we not inviting non-technical people to the conversation?
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. It should be like that because you want the entire organization behind it. You want the CFO to say, "Hey, I haven't received a dashboard lately. How are we
Right.
doing on our risk?" Right? And
Right.
you want the OT engineers to say, I need access to the solution because I think I have a vulnerability." We want all of that. But what I would like on top of that to accelerate that process a little bit, instead of a few years, it would be nice to cut that in half
Mm.
because the cyber clock is ticking.
Let me ask you this. When you look at, oh, I had a really good question. I forgot what it was now. Anyway, we'll keep going. It was
It'll
something important. It was
it'll
related to this. Very interesting culture differences across Europe and the United States. It's a good subject. Let's see if we've got just a quick slide. Get my mouse over here. I think there was one thing, and you already said it. So I did some research, US versus Europe technology sale challenges, right? When you actually like going to sell. US prefers stories alongside pitches of a vision of transformation. That pretty much is my 9-to-5 job, Trish. I think
Yeah.
this got it right. But Europeans like facts, numbers, and data to effectively outline how a product is going to affect their top and bottom line. I think that's what
That's
you're
my
saying.
job. Yeah.
It's your person.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a storyteller. I love it. And I think it's important to pull more people into the story, more characters. This is how you
Yes.
add value. This is how you add value. But at the end of the day, if I'm personally making decisions for my own home or my own house or my own region or my own company, I want to know the facts and the numbers. I think we have lost sight of that in the United States because we've been on this like little cyber arms race where how much we can spend sort of dictates how mature we are. And we're seeing that's not really true.
No,
Which
no.
is why I think from a resilience and a regulation and a kind of true market maturity in 20 years, I think Europe might have the upper hand. At least the way they're approaching their regulation, I think they're doing a better job than the US.
So I would like to see the combination. What I have learned also in Europe is that, yes, I give stories, I give visions, especially the innovation. Where are we going to? what are the trends in cybersecurity. But then at the same time, and that actually does help, is it's fact-based. It's return on investment. How much am I spending? What is the likelihood of something happening? Can we do it cheaper? Can we do it ourselves? All those questions actually come up here in the Dutch market. And I do think it's important because it sends me back to the drawing board and to see, hey, let me look at this solution. Maybe they're right. Maybe we need to do it differently.
It should be done like that. And I think that the best product, service, even agreements at asset owner levels or purchase of a product or service, the best ones are the ones where you challenge yourself and say, wait, if we couldn't do this, how would we solve it? And you whiteboard it. You figure it out. I think that's the right way to verify we absolutely must have this, and we've linked that investment to a business outcome. I think more people are starting to go that direction in the United States. I mean, I'll be the first to say, in my interaction with a lot of European asset owners, I don't think they're behind they don't have that figured out either. The question that I offer is the NIS2 directive going to push them further in that direction? To be determined. Let's talk about something that's a little unique called venture capital, and how does that potentially position this cyber arms race in Europe versus the United States? Did some research this morning. I mean, I've got my own personal perspectives, but I wanted to put some data up on the board. This I found really interesting. The United States has over 2,000 VC firms representing about 270 billion under management, whereas there's only about a tenth of that in Europe across all the different countries. And so my entire thesis is that people tend to invest in things they know. Okay. So you've got a lot of finance oriented. I think you have more finance oriented VCs here in the United States that are trying to invest in companies to develop some sort of technology to help solve a problem. Those finance folks are going to be more in tune with the needs of the United States more than other places. This is their backyard. Their investment thesis comes from people they interact with, industries they've been a part of. So I think there's probably more asset owners willing to spend money. It'd be interesting to lay this on top of GDP, okay? When you take a look at Europe, what my research found is that the average VC firm has more time in a specific sector than US-based firms. VC firms in Europe invest an average of $1 million per deal, whereas the VC firms invest almost $4 million in the United States. So what the research uncovered, let me see if there's another slide here. No, this is going to be our last slide. My hypothesis is that more money has flown into US-based companies or foreign-based companies that raised from United States VCs, which happens all the time. Where are those VC dollars going to be deployed first? They're going to be deployed in the United States. So we see this huge rise of venture capital followed by a huge increase in the overall spending in cybersecurity locally. We don't see that same thing happening in Europe. It's a little bit more of a steady state. Research indicates, and the numbers prove this, is that the VC firms in Europe over the course of the last 5 years are narrowing the gap on the return on their investment. With the United States, VC firms in Europe are doing better than the ones in the United States. So the argument here is it's not how much you spend or how many dollars you put towards an investment. I think Europeans have got this really well articulated, and maybe it's because they're more focused on data. They're more focused on how does this affect my bottom line? Maybe they're more focused on profitability or return or sales, whereas the US has all been about the biggest story that they can come up with. And I think that the long-term challenge that introduces into the cyber marketplace is that you have a lot more companies trying to sell a story, whereas in Europe, you're going to have a lot more companies actually selling a core value. Your thoughts, Trish?
Absolutely. The last sentence was exactly it. Here's the statement. We will not buy anything. unless we know for 99.9% for sure it is a good investment or is it's really helping me reduce my risk.
Hmm.
And we need facts, numbers on management level and on peer level. Then we need the C-suite to all agree, and everybody wants to chip in on that. And then the board, we need to convince to understand what is their business risk, and then we can map whatever we want to sell or buy to their business risk. And then it's done. But it
Hmm.
takes a very long time to get there,
Yeah.
years.
Well, people are, a lot of the macroeconomics of the cyberspace has put downward pressure on buyers, whether it's interest rates or whether it's global conflicts. Um, I was pleasantly surprised at how Europe has approached cyber investments, and it's interesting to see how NIS2 and everything's going to shake that out. Very interesting. Well, we're almost at time. We've covered venture capital, we've covered regulations, we've covered culture. Are you still convinced that you think that the United States is better off than Europe, Trish?
Yeah.
Still on.
You've given Europe a lot of compliments, and from your perspective, and I was like, yeah, he has a point, absolutely. But there are, I think we need to, the thing is, I think we need the acceleration.
Yeah, I think
Once we
one,
get that, it would be better.
very good points. Well, I think 1 + 1 can equal 3 or 4.
Absolutely.
I think that
Because
across. Go ahead.
yeah, no, for me, right, the conclusion is, and you see that too, that actually on government and regional level, the US and APAC, EMEA, they're trying to work together a little bit more. And of course, that's going to take a while too. We know that. But like, let me look at your regulation. Let me see what you're doing. What can we learn from each other? And they will consider things. But that's a step already towards the right direction. On another level, peer to peer, I think just like we did in our conference in London, right? That's
Mhm.
what we should do. We should have our own round tables and learn from this. And then you get it straight from the source. We can help each other.
Yeah.
I gave you some pointers today. You gave me some. And I hope that our audience also has gotten something out of this. But I think that's the level we can start. And then the acceleration will start bottom up.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Trish, any final words for the audience? I really do appreciate you being here. You've brought a lot of data to the table. You brought some perspectives. You brought some stories. I appreciate you coming on the show. Any last thoughts?
No, let's continue this collaboration. And I hope that we can actually expand our circle.
Sounds good. Well, as we finish up, ladies and gentlemen, you have been watching the Business of Cyber show. Who is winning the arms race in cybersecurity? Is it Europe or is it US? Only you can decide. As we all go back, we think about limited resources. There's just not enough time, people, and budget inside of cybersecurity. CISOs and OT directors are challenged more than they ever have. If you're interested in these topics or you have a topic that aligns with that thesis, give me a shout at ted@securitygate.io and be happy to collaborate with you. Thanks again, and check out episode 20 coming next Tuesday. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, Trish.
Bye-bye.
Trish, that was